Yep. And hello, for everyone who's watching right now and in the future. I see we've got Godless Scummer and Hissy's and Danger Hissy of Hissy's Hideaway in the chat right now. And of course, Dave left his woof at the beginning.
Dave always woofs.
Yeah.
And he re-woofed.
Yeah. And so, the first Saturday in May is always a free comic book day. So, in celebration of that, we were going to do comic books, but Ansgar had to cancel as for personal reasons, and so that's being postponed until after Star Wars month. So last minute, we're just gonna kind of talk miscellaneous stuff after I bring up canon, the concept of canon in tabletop role playing.
Oh,
because it was something I wanted to touch on last week, but
we got sidetracked.
Yeah, we got so bounced around because it's kind of a big topic to where I couldn't, it's completely slipped my mind. And so it seems, when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, hold on. Getting up a banner. But when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, there's kind of a spectrum of what is canon to the game. Because on one end, one end of the extreme, you have something like Fate, where it's there's no such thing in canon as canon. You just make up whatever the hell you want. Here's just some mechanics that you can use to tell your own stories and play through. And then you have at the other end the White Wolf or World of Darkness games, where everything, where their meta plot canon is intricately intermeshed with the game system itself, to where you can't really play a campaign of a White Wolf game, like Vampire the Masquerade or Changeling the Dreaming or Mage the Ascension, without accounting for their set canon. And then Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is somewhere in the middle, where it's here's some suggested lore, but go do whatever the hell you want.
Having said that, if you're DMing a game and you've created a world to play in, that world develops its own canon as well.
Yeah.
Even if somebody else then DMs in your world, they kind of have to follow the rules that you've laid down.
Yeah. Or how sometimes the canon of a world can get set with a dice roll.
Oh yeah. So you don't always have full control over it, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. It's going to be the same sort of thing. As part of our Star Wars month, we're doing a role-playing session where we're going to be doing Star Wars, but with 5th edition rules of D&D.
Yeah.
So, and for that, even though it's us mucking around playing Star Wars, we still have to try to keep within the canon of Star Wars to some extent, or else it's not going to feel particularly Star Warsy.
Yeah,
Disney
for
can learn a lot from us.
Yeah, like for instance, as I'm going to be playing a Jedi, well, a gray Jedi, someone who doesn't quite fall into the light side, dark side, dichotomy.
Yeah.
And I have to be I have to be very careful with like what spells and such I'm gonna be picking, because they have to be ones that can be conceivably flavored as force powers.
Yeah, so I mean that's a particular thing that we have to focus on when we're playing this game. So it's going to be a little bit more limited even than when we do the Christian based ones, where
Yeah,
we're making fun of the Gospels and that, because basically we do anything because it's I mean, the Christian Bible is a magical world, so we
Yeah.
can do magic.
um,
But with this, the magic is very limited to what the force powers can do, and
Yeah.
there is limits within the canon of Star Wars. So
yeah.
it's going to be interesting.
But in what I was saying in regards to canon being set by a dice roll, and hello, Sammy Jenkins. A story from a campaign that I've that I was have been co-running with a friend is we had a the party was settling down for the night, and we had the Elvish Ranger and I had the Elvish Ranger do a survival check to find a good campsite. It's what I tend to do at the end of the night, at the end of the day. And how well it rolls depends on what kind of a what kind of a camping location they found. And so he rolls a natural 1. And so I start, describing how he thinks he found the best campsite ever, and then like dropping out like hints to the rest of the party that no, this campsite is right next to an owlbear den. And the ranger started playing it up as he didn't believe that owlbears existed. So it kind of became canon in our setting that elves don't believe in owlbears.
But he must change his minds when he saw them.
Oh no. He believed it was a guy in a suit.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. But like even so when it comes to like canon in a tabletop role-playing setting, it's much looser, even unless you're talking White Wolf, where it's got no, this is how things are.
Yeah.
And it's not as quite as constrained as what we think of canon and other forms of media. And which actually had me thinking a little bit, especially in regards to the chat we had with Badger earlier this week. Poor Badger. Where a lot of this canon debacle talk, about who gets to dictate canon, is actually technically a result of the current state of our copyright laws. Because when an author or a corporation has the copyright to a piece of media, they get to dictate what the canon is, and then it falls into the public domain, where the public gets to decide what bits of canon they like and what bits of canon they don't. Like, for instance, with like Greek mythology, there's a bunch of different, like, there is no real, like, there's a bunch of stories that everyone kind of knows, but there is no real set canon as far as I'm aware.
Well, we got that. We need the historian here to tell us all about that.
Yeah. Hissy. If you want, it like, there's all your Hissy. The door to this show is always open to you. Because we could really use a classicist right now. Speaking of which, go ahead and subscribe to Hissy's Hideaway.
The good thing about things that are out of copyright is that canons can be developed along other avenues. And when corporations take out copyrights under the guise that a corporation is a person, then, of course, you lose that whole thing of the person's died, so the copyright expires, which has always been Disney's argument. So as long as a corporation exists, when corporations can technically exist forever unless they go bust, they hang on to copyright for fucking ever. And to an extent, this stifles creativity. I don't necessarily having a problem with the dead set core of that being owned by a company for a prolonged period of time. That's not necessarily a problem. I have a problem with, over a prolonged period of time, them controlling what other people can do in either in a similar vein or with those characters to a small extent. I mean, for example, I don't see that Disney should have any right to shit on anybody who's doing fan fiction and not making money off it. I have major problems with that, as I do with the Star Wars avenue, Star Trek avenues of it and stuff like that. It's like,
you called?
Fuck off, leave the fan fiction alone. But I over a long enough period of time, over a decent period of time, I don't have a problem with it, because corporations do have to make their money off these things. And as we know, I mean, Star Wars has been, 40 years in the making?
Yeah.
To get to where they are now, and they're not done as a company. So I think as long as the company is actually producing content for their IP, that's not necessarily a problem. But if a company wants to sit on their laurels for 10 years, no, fuck them. They're done.
Yeah. But anyways, here we have our resident classicist.
You called?
Now you can correct us, Hissy.
Yeah.
I was so busy trying to get into the stream, I missed what you said. I just heard my name.
I wasn't talking about the classics anyway. I was talking about copyright.
Yeah.
Leaving classics to you. You're the historian.
Canon and the classics. That's fun. You'll have to excuse me. I always seem to be eating on the internet. I swear.
You're doing it, Maro.
Are the neighbors partying?
So
I'm eating tablets, so that's entirely different.
Yeah, I did that earlier.
Nearly dropped that one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing about the classics is, if you want to talk about canon and how canon grows and changes, your classic is, you want to look at the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then you want to look at the Aeneid. Which is one of the best self-insert fan fictions I've ever seen. Well, not self-insert, but, minor character AU. Kind of the origin of the concept.
But,
to a large extent, isn't the Roman stories and pantheon somewhat of a fan fiction to the Greek?
I think it's less a fan fiction and more a translation.
A translation. Oh, yeah, but they did change things, didn't they?
There were certain changes, motivational changes, character changes.
And new stories.
A few new stories. Some of them were Etruscan in origin as opposed to Greek. It's difficult with the Romans because the Greeks had this conception, and when we're talking about Greek myths and Greek gods, their gods were kind of, they all had a bit of a trickster vibe going on.
They did, didn't they?
They were very... the humans were there for their amusement. It's a bit like one of us going up to a fish tank and doing this to make the fish follow us.
You can kind of respect that of them, because they weren't portrayed as completely all-powerful or moral or anything like that. They were just these really supreme They were these really powerful beings that did fuck loads of stuff and then fucked around with humanity. I can respect that more than the Christian idea of a god.
Well, the Christian god's just a Mary Sue.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you want to talk fan fiction terms? The Christian god is such a Mary Sue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he can do everything except create water.
No, he can do that too.
Make you create wine from water.
Yeah, but he can't. But he can't create water itself because it pre-existed him.
Yep.
Cool.
Ooh. So that explains why Jesus had them bring him jars of water to convert into wine, because he couldn't make the water in just an empty jar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Romans came along, and the Romans were more of the gods were more what we would associate with what people think of a deity. They're more protectionist. There was more of a connection there, as opposed to people saying, oh, Zeus is in a mood today, we're all going to die.
Yeah. The Greek gods were kind of assholes.
That's what caused the
Zeus was in a mood. That's why my wife is pregnant.
Yeah. No, that's a different kind of mood.
It was a good excuse back then, though.
Yeah, very good excuse between Zeus and Mars.
Mars, yeah.
Because I mean, the great story is that Romulus and Remus are, I suppose, bastard sons of Mars. Bit of an anachronism. How did the Vestal Virgins exist before Rome existed? But yeah, just one of those stories that you kind of have to go with. I mean, I like the Aeneid. I'm one of those people that it was kind of predictable.
Yeah.
Because I tend to prefer fan fiction to canon anyway. Yeah. So Bath was dedicated to Sulis Minerva, a merging of Celtic and Roman goddesses. I think appropriating is possibly the wrong term, because they didn't so much as appropriate as the technical term for it is to syncretize.
Yeah.
So yes, they used it to their advantage, and they went in and they took over, and they combined them where they could see similarity. Very much to give an example you might be familiar with, is everyone familiar with what the Catholic Church did in Ireland with the Celtic cross?
Yeah, so, well, the Catholic Church did that everywhere. The Christian Church used to be big on appropriating local symbols and ideologies. So, like, they appropriated shitloads from the Norse, with Thor being like the appropriation from in place of Jesus.
That's
and
a
stuff,
legacy from the Romans. That is a legacy from the Romans, taking symbolism and matching it to their own story.
Yeah, you know.
But the way the Romans did
they're either
whereas,
just saints or demons.
Yeah, but the way the Romans did it, I'm going to say the Catholics, because this is, pre-schism.
Yeah, it was the Catholics. Yeah,
the Catholics went in and took what they wanted, but then wiped out the rest of the religion. The Romans didn't do that. This is why, and I got into this rant a little bit yesterday, and I'm going to do it again because...
Please do.
Syncretism is not the same as appropriation, because syncretism allows for the existence of what was there before. Syncretism doesn't go in and destroy. So, in the Roman Empire, at least until sort of
they adopted Christianity, basically.
Century AD. You worshipped multiple and various gods, but it's very much personal choice. You cannot possibly worship all the gods in the Roman pantheon. A, you'd never work, because you'd have every day of work, because it'd all be a feast day.
Yeah.
B, you'd never sleep, because you'd be making so many prayers and sacrifices you wouldn't have time to. And C, you'd never eat because you won't be able to afford to once you'd made all your sacrifices and everything else. It would just be impossible. If you look, I'm going to direct you to Ovid's Fasti, which is most of the documents kind of, a lot of it's there. The first half of the Roman calendar in poem form. And every week, there's at least one feast day. At least one.
Yeah.
And then you've got your major feasts in between that, which are longer. So you've got things like your Parentalia in, I want to say February, which is like 7 days long. You've got Saturnalia in December. You've got Saturnalia originally started out as 1 day, and over the course of the empire went from being 1 day with Epinalia on the 18th, and other various ones in and around. It went from that to going from the 17th all the way through until in the modern calendar, like the 28th. And again, no work. So the idea that you could worship the entire Roman pantheon is just nonsense. You have time for nothing else. But the reason it got like that, got so full and so convoluted, is because everywhere they went, they sort of looked and went, "Oh, that god protects this city. The people here like that, so let's let them worship it. They can carry on worshipping it, but they've also got to worship our gods." And this is a thing. This is why the Romans weren't all that keen on Christians and Jews. Largely, they didn't care what religion you followed because they were monotheists. But they weren't just monotheists; they were exclusionary monotheists. This is my term that I don't know if anyone else uses it.
No, I think you're actually dead right with the term there.
Which basically means you can believe that there is but one God. But what they're saying is there is one God and no other God, and I can't worship any other God or even acknowledge any other God. Yeah. Now, in a time and a culture where the belief and the tradition is that these gods protect certain aspects of life, Apollo stops you getting the plague. So we've royally pissed him off recently. I don't know what we did, but we pissed him off. I think it was all the music from the 2000s because he is the god of music as well. So I think it was all the recent music pissed him off, and this is payback. It's as good an explanation as any right now.
Well, it's certainly better explanations than Trumpy's giving.
Exactly. And, Apollo doesn't call you to drink disinfectant either. Okay, so do you know what I mean? So
or shove ultraviolet lights up your ass.
Is that a thing? If you open your mouth,
Trump wanted people to get ultraviolet light inside you. So if you're drinking chlorine at the other end, you must be shoving the light up your ass.
Ultraviolet light. No, what happened there is Trump got confused. Someone shone the ultraviolet light in his ear and it came out the other side, so we thought everything was okay.
I love it.
But yeah, the whole point was you can worship multiple gods, and the Romans were cool with that. But the state religion was taxation. It was also the welfare state. It was I say this very, very ill-advisedly and only to try and give an idea of what the concept entailed. This is not me drawing a comparison. This is me trying to explain in modern terms. It was almost...
Nickelback.
Yeah, blame Nickelback. Why does the Nickelback always get the stick when Justin Bieber's right there? But yeah, I'm going to call it a kind of proto-socialist-esque setup with all the disclaimers that applies to that. And basically what I'm saying is you paid your taxes by making your sacrifices to the temple. You also paid your other taxes, but part of your religious obligation to the state was to make your sacrifices to the temple. Because when you're making sacrifices to the temple, this pleases the god that protects the city, and therefore the city is safe.
Hey,
Scammer.
Hi, Scummer. I knew the mention of socialism would get you on here.
I just thought it was really bad timing. The time you first came in, and like Jen said something like along the lines of "take your fan fiction, fuck off," and I was like, "Oh, bad timing."
Bad timing. Yes, you called.
That's not exactly what I said.
Fan fiction is better than the canon. Fight me.
Yeah.
No, I was saying that. I was saying that. This kind of thing that they do with that is like they were telling people with fan fiction to fuck off, and they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Nice
unfortunately, just the time when
it was just the time.
So like take your fan fiction to fuck off. It's like, oops, bad timing.
So yeah, that's why. So that's how the sacrifices work. But the sacrifices, the meat now. When animals were sacrificed in a temple, or when people gave like oat or grain or anything else to the temple, it was not just left there.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the sacrifices, let's say you've got a whole ass pig and you're sacrificing this thing, although a pig wasn't all that common actually, probably more like lamb or various animals.
Ox or something like that, yeah.
Oxes were quite common, cows, that sort of thing, bulls, edible meat. And the thing is, in the Roman tradition, and it comes from the Iliad, the sacrifice was actually kind of the inedible meat. It was the organs and the scrag ends and the bits you wouldn't feed to a dog. You know, it's especially in ancient times when they didn't really have a concept of cleaning the meat like we do. And, you know, they probably assumed that a lot of the organs were poisoned and things.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the organs were used for divination and other stuff as well. Like there's a great one about chicken guts were used as divination.
Oh, for soothsayers, yep.
Yeah, soothsayers.
Isn't like the theological reason for that was like Prometheus tricked Zeus and they lifted that from...
Yeah, so Prometheus tricked Zeus into accepting the scrag ends. And then so the humans could keep the meat. So what they would do is that these big feasts, and this I think is part of the reason, at least on an economic basis, why there's so many feast days in ancient Roman polytheism. Because people had to eat, and a lot of people could not afford meat. You get places that eat fish and stuff. You know, there's a lot of in Ostia and places there's a lot fish in the diet, but not so much meat, not so much farm animals, unless you lived on a farm. Yep. So this would get shared out amongst anyone who attended the temple. Modern kind of similar thing, think the Eucharist in a Catholic mass. Everyone gets a piece of what the sacrifice is, kind of that. I don't know how close that link is or whether that's borrowed or anything.
But it
makes
maybe
sense.
Like a cross between, you know, between the Eucharist / what's the word? What's the Protestant word for it?
Bread and wine.
Communion.
Communion.
Yeah, communion. We call it communion.
Like a slash between, like a cross between the communion and like a potluck.
Yeah, like a communion and a cookout kind of thing. You know, everyone gets a piece, and for a lot of Romans, especially the lower classes, there was a bread dole. You got your bread, you got your grain dole, which you then got put into bread. You didn't get any meat dole, so this was your meat. It was your protein intake. Which makes sense, because if you've got an entire city or an entire culture where the people are working hard and it's backbreaking work, they need protein. And it's a good way of... that's what I meant by kind of proto-socialism, communism type thing. Those who can afford it, give it and make the sacrifices, and everyone benefits.
It was their form of social security, in a sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm drawing on. Yeah. That's all I meant by that. Don't read any more into it than that. It's not.
Despite the negative stuff you hear about the Roman Empire, it was quite progressive.
I mean, compared to Athens, yes. Not so much compared to Sparta. Although Sparta was an odd duck. Really odd duck.
Yes. I think the thing that Rome was successful though, because it used the carrot as well as the stick. That's one of the reasons it was very successful.
Yeah.
A lot of more ancient societies are really, really progressive in some ways, and then not so much in others.
Yeah, but our society is even like that now, so
yeah, it is. But it's so for example, in the Roman Empire, as a Roman citizen, you couldn't starve. It would be impossible to starve as a Roman citizen, and people wanted citizenship because you got what was called a grain dole, which was enough grain on a regular basis to have bread made that you could live off. And it was good quality grain, and it was in the city of Rome. So it was very much almost, insofar as it applied to the citizens, and again, saying this very loosely with disclaimers, all the rest of it. I'm a historian, not an economist. It was very much almost a proto-universal basic income. If you were a citizen, you were not going to starve because you had that bread dole. You might not eat well, but you weren't going to starve. And that was a big draw. A lot of people who wanted citizenship, especially the poorer classes, that's why. Because it was a guaranteed meal on the table. It was guaranteed food in your belly.
So why the Romans always had guaranteed garrisons.
Mm-hmm.
Because by serving, you guaranteed citizenship.
Well, once you'd served, if you got your honourable discharge.
Yes.
There was a way into citizenship.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, as auxiliaries and things, you could work your way through. I can't say I particularly agree with that. Demanding people fight in a military to get citizenship is a bit...
There's still, I think there's some modern countries that still sort of do things like that. I mean, probably most notably French Foreign Legion, I think, still does something very similar.
Yeah.
I know
they suggested it as a path to citizenship for people in America at one point, didn't they?
Well, yeah, it is actually, it is a path to citizenship. I know someone in there were a couple people in my basic training unit that got their citizenship upon graduating from basic training.
Okay, so it is a path, and I mean, there's arguments for and against it.
Yeah.
I think demanding, I think it was 30 years service before you got your citizenship. That's the bit I have issue with. Getting it at the end of basic training, yeah, okay. You've made your promise for 10 years or whatever it is, however long your contract is.
Yeah, minimum contract is 3 or 4 years plus training.
Yeah. Which is kind of more reasonable, especially in peacetime.
Okay. Though I will amend it and say that's the minimum contract where you can get benefits when you get out.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can get that in the... Well, I don't quite know what the standing with the British military is, but if you remember a few years ago, there was quite a scandal with, and the public were really quite irate when it was found out that a lot of former Gurkhas, who were like the Nepalese soldiers that fought for the British Army, weren't being allowed to come and live in Britain. I mean, it was a real scandal at the time, you know.
I mean, the war the Gurkhas were in was the it's not my area of expertise, but the war they were in, I know a guy who served.
Falklands.
And
some of them in the Falklands.
Some of them were in the Falklands, and there was another one they were in where they were sort of facing guerrilla fighters. And I'll never forget, we sat drinking one night. I must have been about 19. And he's a friend of my parents, and he sat there and he said, you know, these Gurkhas, it was all when it was all kicking off, and he said, these Gurkhas, they deserve everything, because there used to be a time when we would head out and we knew if we didn't have a Gurkha at the front and a Gurkha at the back, we weren't coming back.
Well, I would say that my stepfather...
They are elite fighters. They're, you know, they're very good. So
my stepfather served in the British Army for well over 20 years, and he always speaks very, very highly of the Gurkha. He wouldn't have a word said against them.
Yeah, there's a level of respect there, I think, with anyone who's served in the British Army for the Gurkhas.
Yeah. But anyways, the point that, you know,
off topic a bit.
Yeah.
Well and truly.
The point that, like, because there isn't that much of a topic, but the point that kind of started this whole the appeal to hissy was you know, what we have with our, you know, the perpetual copyright, you know, causing the various, like, what is canon debacles, specifically in regards to Star Wars, but there are, you know, other examples. Isn't as much of a thing when it comes to classical mythology, because yes, you have your big stuff like the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid, and then you have the other myths that are kind of tangential, and you're like, okay, that where you can just kind of pick and choose.
The problem is, if you can't prove who owned it, how can you prove who gets the copyright?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm just going to point out, like, okay, I will freely admit I use Amazon a lot, especially right now. I'm stuck in isolation, you know.
Yeah.
But it really royally pisses me off what they're doing with a lot of classic literature. So what they do is they buy up the old out of copyright translations. So if you've got a translation of the Iliad from like the 1800s, you can probably get it on Project Gutenberg. You can probably get it on an archive website or in a library relatively cheaply or even for free. But what they were doing, they were buying up these books and taking out copyright on them. So then they had the right to sell
copyright on somebody else's thing.
They were buying ownership of them so they could sell them exclusive rights.
Oh, that's fucked up.
This isn't this hasn't just happened with like fictional literature. This has just been a thing with anything that's a you know, that was in the public domain. Like there was
public domain. Yeah,
there was a big furore with the Marxist Internet Archive when a lot of Karl Marx's works that were in the public domain were taken off because someone owned the copyright, and you kind of think of the irony of that. You kind of just know that Marx is turning in that tomb in Highgate Cemetery, just think about that, you know.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't like bust out of his grave and go beat someone.
Well, he was an atheist, so he didn't believe in life after death, did he?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm surprised his corpse didn't bust out of its grave on reflex and go beat someone.
But you know, that's just an example of what I mean. It is. It is. I think it's bad when they're talking about classical. You know, when we're talking about the old literature that should be in the public domain. It is very frustrating. And I said, and then again, it's like, well, do these things become official canon, or you know?
It's the same shit Disney pulled with the Grimm's fairy tales.
Yes.
Well, though there is a slight nuance / difference to what Disney did. That, I mean, it's still kind of skeevy, but to what Amazon did, because Disney was, we make our own version, then we make it so freaking prolific that that's what everyone thinks about.
Yeah.
And then, as I understand what you were explaining, Amazon is like, yeah, we're just going to buy the rights to it and say it's under our copyright.
Yeah.
I mean,
what that does is it stops recreations.
Yeah.
It stops the proliferation of the works.
Yeah.
It essentially creates a paywall to something that should have been free.
Well, I mean, you use, like, obviously you talk about the things like classical things like the Romans or whatever. Always scares me the idea that Disney might get it in their head that they can actually copyright the like Norse mythology if they suddenly realize, hold on, we own 4.
Oh, they own Hercules. Don't tell them.
So I've got this is just a particular version of Norse mythology here, but I mean, it's just happens to be the Neil Gaiman retelling of them. But but they're not really much that's been changed. Neil Gaiman actually didn't change that much really from them anyway.
I think for Norse pagans, Neil Gaiman's a useful translated source, isn't he? Do they use him as a translated source to some extent? Some of them with a pinch of salt, but
with a pinch of salt, because some of them, because some of the sort of words are very anglicized, like I know people got a bit hairy because he called one of the realms Muspel instead of Muspelheim, so there was little things like that. I think that people got a little bit funny about, but.
Yeah, that's just
actually. But the Norse, you've got to remember that a lot of the Norse myths that we understand, from like the poetic and the prose Eddas, are somewhat sanitized, Christianized versions of those myths.
Yeah.
Because they were written in like either the 12th or 13th century that the Eddas were written. So this is well after Norse. That Christianity very much. Kind of more or less was more than dominant over the old Norse religion.
I do think we can't overemphasize the fact that most of these stories, be they Norse, be they Roman, Greek, Eastern, wherever, they come from a bardic culture, not a literate culture, and that's so important because the bards had the basic story. That's why a lot of it's done in poetry, because it's easier to remember the rhythm and the scansion and repeat it. It's a lot easier to learn a poem than it is to learn a page of a book.
Yeah.
Hey, Badger.
Hey, Badger.
Hey, Badger.
You have a link if you want to come and shout about something.
But
we're not going to have a whole
the
hour on Star Wars again.
And it's the same way the Robin Hood myth grew up.
Yeah.
The bards move around telling this story, and they hear other people telling the story, and they pull bits and they change it to meet the local area because people like to hear about their hometown, and it grows and it grows, and you have 2 bards selling the same story, telling totally different tales. But they're calling it the same story, and eventually someone looks at it and goes, "Oh, I'm going to write that down."
Yeah.
Yes.
But hold on. Yeah, in regards to the Christianization thing, that reminds me of a big problem. I know it's a nitpick. It's a big problem I have with Beowulf. Is how it's lauded as a relic of Britain's pre-Christian past, but when you read through Beowulf, it's full of Christian mythology.
Yes, because you've probably read the Tolkien translation.
No, I'm actually the one I got started wasn't what I actually started reading Beowulf before you bought me the Tolkien translation.
Yeah.
But it's like
again, though,
it's got Grendel as like a son of as a descendant of Cain and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we all like Christian or ex-Catholic? Yeah.
I've never been ex-Christian. I've never been Christian. I was
you
a
know,
vegan, though, weren't you?
Okay.
I was a polytheist. Yes.
Yes,
So
you were a polytheist.
we all know the moinker for one of the moinkers, especially in Catholicism. I don't know if it comes across in Christianity, of the King of Kings.
Yeah.
Do you know where that term was used before Christianity?
Where?
In the Iliad.
Mm.
To describe Menelaus.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was describing Agamemnon.
Sorry, Agamemnon, yeah.
Oh, it was.
That was funny with names.
Yeah,
but it was used to describe the king of the kings.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally
That
was
the
also
thing with
applied to
Christianity and
Darius.
Judaism. I mean,
Yeah.
Christianity and Judaism is a borrowed religion. All their ideas came from other places.
Hmm.
I mean, El was imported from Babylonia. So,
Well, the thing is, the written form of Beowulf was written down by a Christian monk, so of course the Christian monk's gonna slap in a bunch of Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, gonna get his Christianity all up in there.
Listen,
as the Christian monks did
used
to all of
put
history.
Sophocles into yes.
Yeah.
Christian monks put. I will say this so many times because it angers me on such a deep, visceral level that some random Christian monk in the 3rd century thought it was appropriate to take the words of Sophocles and Socrates and give them to St. Paul.
Yeah.
I just, especially the Socrates one, because Socrates was a lot of things. What he wasn't was some jumped up ex-soldier with a hard-on for authority. Okay?
Yeah.
That wasn't what he was. He was the exact opposite of that. Socrates was very much a... Listen, the dude at his own trial for death got snarky.
Yeah.
He was a snarky bastard from birth to death, and nothing was going to stop him.
He was.
That's not St. Paul.
He's arguably history's first troll.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I don't know.
He's such a troll.
I don't know. I think Diogenes might be a bigger troll.
Mm,
Well,
Behold a man.
yeah, but that's one instance. Socrates did it
also,
for life.
there's the whole
Socrates
living on the
was
streetlight
arguably-
and pissing everywhere like a dog thing.
Yeah, but Diogenes was a bit...
Yeah, that's just what being tapped in the head. I don't know whether you could say
Yeah.
Socrates was tapped in the head.
Not
Not in the same way, anyway.
He was argumentative. Say that is Socrates.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the problem if you're looking back at history, especially when Christian apologists do it. They've got to realize that all their historical documents that they're looking at the moment are written through the monks' eyes that were Christians, and they've got embellishments.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's not a completely accurate representation of what the history was, unless you can find some documents that predate that.
And even the documents that predate that have their own issues.
They do.
actually-
That's why. Oh,
That's
do we
actually
know
kind
for a fact that this person existed? Well, unless we've got minted coins with their face on it or something else physical other
That's
than a
not even
written
a guarantee.
document.
There's minted coins with
There's
Apollo
no
on them.
guarantee on anyone.
I think Ring was trying to say something.
Go on,
Sorry.
Yeah, but that's kind of why I have like a sort of love-hate relationship with Mesoamerican mythology. Because like what we have is, so freaking metal and kind of awesome. But the only thing we have of their mythology, like everything we know was filtered through the conquistadors who absolutely obliterated it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, two things. First of all, that you have to understand when you're dealing with ancient texts. Anything that predates about the big black plague in Europe, pretty much anything that predates that, it's either we have it because someone deliberately kept it and wrote it down, or it's a total accident.
Yeah.
It's a pure dumb luck why we have it.
Yeah.
So
And
who's the
survivor's bias. Our entire history is based on survivorship bias.
Yeah.
And most of that bias comes from the early Christian church, because they went and destroyed everything else they didn't like, or at least tried to.
Yeah.
So I've just bought something. Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, because I was just going to make a joke.
Because we did, like, there is a bunch of stuff that we got again in the Renaissance that was preserved by the Arabs and the Muslims.
Yes. But again, it's filtered through the Muslim perspective.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
personal anecdote. I have a friend who has a lot of Muslim friends, and we get talking and things, and we talk religion sometimes. And I was talking paganism, and she said to me, "But pagans left poor people to starve." Because there's apparently some story in Islam, and I've never checked it out, so I don't know, that apparently the Prophet walked into a Roman temple somewhere out in the east, sort of the Eastern Empire, and wasn't allowed to take the meat to feed the poor. This is how the story is presented to Muslims. Now, as someone who studied Roman polytheism, I know immediately he wouldn't have wanted that meat. That meat was the scrag ends, it was the hoofs, it was the lips, it was the organs, the stuff the butcher can't sell.
Because the good stuff they were already going to give.
Yeah, not only that, but it would have been stood for several days. So it would have been rotten or getting on for it, especially in the heat of the Middle East. And this is what this prophet wanted to feed the poor beggars outside the temple. Now, as someone who understands the history of it, I understand why the polytheists argued with him. But that's not what Muslims are taught. What Muslims are taught is these polytheists cared more about making sacrifices to their God than feeding the poor. That's how it's pitched. Yeah. And that's how this person pitched it to me. Yeah. But do you see? And the thing is, this meat that he was so keen to give to the poor people would have probably been like, what's the word in Islam? Is it haram? It wouldn't have been halal meat. It would have been the organs. It wouldn't have been butchered cleanly. There would have been so much wrong with it on a religious, personal, hygienic, every level. And yet it's pitched as these greedy Romans don't want to give meat to their poor people.
Yeah.
So again,
because
that's just one example of a modern anecdote I have of where Muslims have the incorrect perception of polytheism. So yes, their scholars retained a lot of information and absolute respect for that. But don't read it uncritically. Read it with the same critical eyes you would read any other source anywhere. No source gets a free pass.
Yeah. Even in modern times, we get people who, for whatever bent, mostly religious, want to rewrite and modify history to fit a narrative, like the Texan school governors who are trying to rewrite the Bible so that slavery doesn't look so bad.
I mean, it's not like they have a lot of work to do.
Rewrite school textbooks. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when it comes to the Bible, they don't have a lot of work to do.
No, they don't.
Putting in the textbooks that Moses was a founding father.
Yeah, and that sort of shit. No, it's like, no. But this is what happens, and this is what has always happened. And people are kids are going through school and learning this. So all of a sudden you have a point where people are learning the wrong things because it's in some book somewhere. This is why we get idiots like flat earthers on the internet. We've got this media capability,
and published doesn't mean it's fact checked.
Pushed out.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Just because it's published doesn't mean it's fact checked.
Fact checked.
That's something you can quote me directly on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the thing. And we're going to always have that issue that not everything out there is going to be honest and true, and people are going to believe the wrong things.
Yeah, and not
hold on,
everything
I'm going to turn the camera and mic off for 1 minute. You guys keep chatting. I want to get something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not everything that's published is meant seriously or straight faced. Because, like, for instance, Jonathan Swift's Modest Proposal.
Yeah.
He didn't actually, he wasn't actually suggesting that people should eat Irish babies. He was pointing a lens at what, at the shit that was going down in Ireland and say, hey, if we're really a compassionate people, we should be doing something about it.
Yeah.
If we're going to have dominion over this country, maybe we should look after it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Speak of communism and scummer shall appear.
Scummer.
Oh, hold on. What we got? Here we got here history of the Russian Revolution.
Right.
That's Leon Trotsky's own
because
version.
We're talking about the reliability of text and how to read an ancient text, how to read any text critically. If you're genuinely, seriously interested in learning how to do it, start with this. I think it's available on Kindle and hardback. It's called The Handbook for Classical Research by David Shapps. Okay.
Yeah.
This was set as a text for my master's in classical studies. And it goes through all of it. I'm just going to read a bit of the blurb. The basics, language, the traditional fields, physical remains, the written word, the classics and related disciplines, and the classics since antiquity. Topics covered range from history and literature, lexicography, linguistics, epigraphy, and paleography to archaeology and, I can never pronounce this word, numismatics, and the study and reception of classics. The idea is it's not just how to read, but also how to find sources that are relevant to your research as well. Start with this. This, for the entirety of most of my masters, has been my Bible. Or my Aeneid, for me, I would say.
I was going to make a joke just because I made a reference to it in the chat at Badger, but I'm just a bit worried at what happens if a big corporation gets hold of this and the copyright on this Math Pig fan fiction.
Math Pig fan fiction?
There's a joke going round about this.
Yeah, you got to blame Sammy for this.
Yeah.
Where's my cigs?
But yeah, like right before you jumped in, Scummer, I was talking about
I was
the modest, the modest proposal.
So I have to get up every so often anyway because it's painful for me sitting down for any too long. So
hence the speak of socialism and scummer shall appear.
Yeah.
Or another thing is Marie Antoinette never actually said let them eat cake. That was actually British propaganda.
Propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so much of history is just that. It's just misquoted ideas or propaganda. I mean, a lot of it religious propaganda. To the victors go the spoils. To the victors go the history as well.
Well, the victors write the history.
That's right.
I think the only exception to that rule, maybe a little bit in history, is but then again, even I'm looking at this more from a Western point of view. Is the only time I can think there'd be an exception to that is the Mongols, because they haven't always been portrayed very favourably in Western history. But I don't know.
Yeah, but they still won, didn't they? And a lot of that was the reception of them, not the actual stories themselves.
Yeah,
the reception changes over time. What we call a good story and a good person in history in 100 years might be a total villain.
Yeah.
For any good reason.
Do you think the reverse could be true and people could think Trump was a hero in 100 years?
If they get to the point where overpopulation is a thing and they're saying this man was quite clearly trying to cull.
I think Churchill was a fucking hero, so there you go.
Don't get me started. Do not get me started.
Who knows? They might be worshiping in churches with gold wig-shaped domes. Because you do have those. You do have that subset of evangelicals
and the Pope has to sit on the golden vanity seat and.
But yeah, you do have that subset of evangelicals that believe that Trump is like the second coming almost.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is what I can't get because there's no way Donald Trump's. I don't want to get turned into a politics thing, but there's no way Donald Trump's a Christian, and the reason I say that is that Donald Trump believes he is God.
Yeah.
He doesn't bow to anyone. He believes he is God.
The problem is, right, you can't judge what a person believes by how they act. In an ideal world, you can, but you can't.
No.
Because people are hypocrites, people are liars, people are selfish, people are people.
We don't always live up to our own standards we set for ourselves,
we don't, but then there's worse when we don't. We try to
as much as possible, but a lot of the time, and we do just. I mean, I think we may have all been guilty of that at some point.
The problem is when you start trying to make his standard.
You write it whole voice.
It all comes back to Trump.
Yeah,
it's all Trump's fault.
This is a subsection of Godwin's law, Hissy's law. It all comes back to Trump.
Yeah.
It's like the 6 degrees of bacon. It's like every topic is at least 6 degrees, or at most 6 degrees removed from Trump.
I have actually coined something called Scummer's law as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that no matter how much of a dumb fuck you may be, the existence of YouTube ultimately dictates that many more dumb fucks that will come along are so worse that you will move up the ladder without achieving anything.
No matter how low on that ladder you are,
there's
always at least one person who's lower.
As of yet,
I think I managed to prove it for you today, didn't I, Jeff? By debunking.
Isn't that just the theory of exponential stupidity?
At least you're not Jordan from Spirit Science.
Oh,
yeah.
You're not
that should be
too badly if there's still someone
at least you're not Jordan.
I'm not them.
Yeah.
Because it works on two things. At least you're not Jordan Peterson, and at least you're not Jordan from Spirit Science.
I mean,
at least you're not Jordan.
Getting back to canon and propaganda, the thing is, and what you have to understand, I'm going to combine the two topics now. You have to understand, nearly every story in history is propaganda.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Of course yeah.
And the problem is people lose the context. Like, even stuff you don't think is propaganda that wasn't originally intended as propaganda then becomes adopted as propaganda. Looking at things like, if anything, 1984 was an anti-propaganda text. And now look at it. Now look at how many people roll it out every time there's something about surveillance or something. And it's become a propaganda tool. Because people associate that book with propaganda. Most people
or like how the Nazis tried to use the Hobbit as propaganda. Yeah, because
the Nazis are Roman iconography.
Like the Nazis were the ones who started all the dwarves are Jewish thing.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, they did.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure the Jews as having those particular physical features predated that.
Well,
But a lot of the Nazis they tried to incorporate a lot of aspects of like Norse mythology into their things as well. I mean, and I kind of led to a little bit of a little heated thing on Dave's, well, mainly between me and Bill on Dave's channel, just because I did. And to be fair, it was just. To be fair, I will be fair now in hindsight and say it was just the way Bill put it across at the time that I had issue with, and when he clarified what he said, I was fine with it. Although
I heard it exactly the way you heard it, and I was like, no,
because he's saying, oh, there's a massive problem. There's a problem with the Norse religion because it's linked to Nazism, and I was like, it was the way he said it in that, because it came across as you're saying anyone who's into that.
Let's not get into a discussion about how things come across and cause arguments on YouTube.
No, but
because
it was just
I have my own beef with certain things like that.
It would, but really, once he clarified what he said, I was like, okay, and I actually was in agreement then, and it was like, yes, there is an element in that culture. However, a lot of that is, if you look back historically, Nazis actually adopted a lot of those sort of symbolisms and
because
myths
they were looking for the Aryan nation, which is people of Norse descent.
I mean, the swastika is a bind rune, for goodness sake,
Well,
the swastika in Roman mosaics all the time, it's a pattern.
Yeah, so and if anyone wants to learn more about the swastika, there's a great video on the Nevermore Tavern about it.
Oh yeah, because he's Buddhist, isn't he?
Well, he does videos on the history of symbols.
Cool.
Along with all the other stuff that he does.
That particular symbol is like been used by so many different cultures around the world, though, and it's. But I know the particular thing where the Nazis got it from was a Norse bind rune. I forget what the name of it was now, but
yeah,
the Nazis were just. But I just. The thing is, right. There's always going to be people who try and adopt the symbols and signs of a previous culture that they idealize without understanding the culture.
Yeah.
We do it. How many
and in doing that, they tend to change that culture.
The good old days.
The
good old days of the 1950s when men were men and women were women and, no.
Or look at all the neoclassical architecture and all the state buildings.
The good old days in the 1950s when we had law and order and people respected their elders, and they don't mention in Britain all the teddy boys going around with knives and starting race riots in Notting Hill. That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the neoclassical architecture in America is just it's wrong.
By the way, Dave's posted a link to that video in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, so. I saw that.
Yeah. It's wrong. 2, it only seems to be associated with a particular demographic of Americans, which, quite frankly, if you're looking to the ancients to justify your politics, something's wrong with you. Because, there's a reason. We've moved on in 2,000 years. Keep up.
But my book.
Mahala book.
You don't get to put Greek columns on your building, then claim that your Bible is the word of God. Like, who do you think you are? Like, you cannot strip the meaning of temple buildings from them and then build up and claim you're a Christian.
Well, I mean, when it talks about rewriting history, I mean, you've got a certain section that are eliminating about more than 13 billion years of or at least 3 billion in human in Earth terms.
I'll give you one. I have
they only have 6,000. There's only about 6,000 years they deal with.
Right. I'm a historian. I have serious beef with some people who practice Wicca. In general, love them to bits. They're, nature worshippers, peace, vegan. Have at it. Enjoy. You're not harming anyone. But when you start spreading ahistorical bullshit, I've got a problem. And one of the things is they claim that this concept of sage smudging. Okay, first of all, sage smudging is a Native American practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very deeply religious, deeply
I feel
symbolic
bad
practice.
because I used to do this shit.
Listen, we all make mistakes, and the fact that you can own it and grow from it is.
Look, I told you I was a
learning.
polytheist. Where do you think my entry level was? You know.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone who's a polytheist ended up on a Wiccan website at some point. We all did it, even because we were just looking and it came up, because that's what people are. Yeah, so. And I'm in quite a few Wiccan groups because there's a lot of crossover. A lot of them worship Hecate. A lot of them worship some of the Greek gods as well, or aspects of the Greek gods. Yes, you can Christian. Yes.
And most of them
unless
Christian
you're
badly.
persecuted, you're not Christianing right.
Yeah. So, and there was one debate I got into, and I got so irritated. I actually went to someone else I know who's pagan, who's Wicca, and she said to me, "What are they doing? This is mad." Because I thought I was in the wrong. I was so confused. Well, I wasn't confused. I was confused at the level of stupidity on display. This woman, who shall remain nameless on a nameless social media platform that allows a lot of idiocy to grow.
That could be any of them. That's not narrowing it down.
Exactly. That's why. This woman claimed that the ancient Greeks practiced sage smudging.
No.
I'm going to let that sink in.
No.
Then
what?
I'm going to destroy it. First of all, sage is a native plant to the Americas. Take a look at a map. Even the Romans, what they had on a map was called the known world. They didn't know the Americas fucking existed. Where the hell did they get sage from? Seriously, point one. Point two, the ancient Greeks burned incense and other things. Yes, they did. They didn't burn fucking sage. Refer to point one. Point three, cleansing an area using incense is a very post-Christian concept and a very indigenous concept to certain cultures. It is not something that European polytheists were very big on. You didn't have to cleanse an area before you performed a rite, other than, getting half a dozen slaves to scrub the floor. Refer to points 1 and 2. And this woman argued with me. She said to me, no, my paganism's from like 800 years ago. I said, your paganism? Okay, I don't care if you're Wicca, but fucking own where you came from.
Sorry,
you came from some dude in the 1950s who saw a business opportunity. Own it.
Hissy, I am listening. I'm just cleaning my room.
Yeah. Listen, your mother sends you to clean your bedroom. You don't light a fucking cone of incense. Don't come. Yes, hissy fit. Yes. But do you know what I mean? And Wiccanism was born in the 50s, and the dude who came up with it admitted that he just Gardner pulled it from all over the shop.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted. It's worse than what the Romans did to the Greeks, man. It's just from everywhere.
Oh, and most of it doesn't fit together either, because they were so disparate, all those different things that he drew from.
Yeah.
Cleansing, Hissy. I'm just cleansing.
Yeah, cleansing.
Yeah.
Woosah.
Get rid of the evil spirits.
Yeah.
Don't modern cleansers normally involve drinking large amounts of laxatives and
I think that's a detox.
or shoving hoses up people's butts?
You talking about Trump's? You talking about Trump's COVID cure again, or?
Yeah.
That's the excuse they give for it now.
Though,
cleansing.
Yeah.
Cleansing.
To touch back on the
we have
of
actual
cultural of how copyright, strictly enforcing copyrights way longer than they should be.
Oh wow, that's from over an hour ago.
Yeah. Is causing cultural, is causing stagnation. Yeah, I've been sitting on this point for a while. Is causing the stagnation of ideas, like the like it's kind of seen as a sort of pseudo canon that the time traveler in the time machine is H.G. Wells, but that's not actually in the work itself. That's something that came, after it fell into the public domain and people started playing with the idea of the time machine. Also, I think there's like stuff from Sherlock Holmes that are considered canon that came after it fell into the public domain.
Like the Deerstalker hat was never in the original Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
No, that's from the actual TV shows.
Mm.
It's a characterization in the TV shows. He never wore them in the books.
Yeah. He smoked a pipe,
and
but
there was artist impressions of him in the book, in some of the short stories, and never a Deerstalker hat.
And the thing is, okay, you know me. It's time. Anyone who's playing the drinking game, get your drink ready. Hissy's going to mention Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Hufflepuffs are very good finders.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear in any of the books. Doesn't appear in any of the official literature. But because a bunch of American college students in the early 2000s told us this in song, the entire fandom accepted it. Hufflepuffs are particularly good finders. That's it. And that's just one example of where fandom really takes over.
Yeah.
And it really it is that. And a lot of fandom stuff, the entire second book of the Iliad, is it the Iliad? I'm sure it's the Iliad, is basically...
Badger's a Hufflepuff.
Badger's, of course, Badger's a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
But is basically an encyclopedia genealogy type thing. It's just a list of names and,
Yeah.
And most of them are self-inserts.
I'm boring. I'm a Gryffindor.
I'm Slytherin, so... Yeah.
Sherlock's tendency towards cocaine doesn't get mentioned on TV or film much either.
Mentioned in the BBC version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it did in the movies with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. I did enjoy the way they modernized the what was it, the 3... In the modern version, they called it a 3-patch problem. He was trying to quit smoking, so he had 3 patches of nicotine.
Patches. Yeah.
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 Which was quite amusing, because that's a callback to the original. But this is the thing. Canon. You have to accept the death of the author on some level in order for canon to grow.
Yeah.
Because the author's not going to produce indefinitely. And the one who does is going to remain nameless for the sake of my sanity.
She who shall not be named.
She who shall not be named.
Come on, Badger, give us your Star Wars fandom. Or if you don't, Badger, I'm going to start talking about how good the Disney movies are.
No,
Badger, I will happily step aside for you to come on and destroy her over that. I'm not even a Star Wars fan, but I've heard
there's plenty of room, but I'm pretty sure that will be gotten into next month
during Star Wars week.
Yeah.
During Star Wars month.
Problem is, Badger's not going to believe me about this because he already knows my opinions on the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Also, just as an aside, because we were doing the whole religion, I meant to say this earlier. I've got really paranoid about saying the word pagan now.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I won't say it. I'll find another word for it. Really paranoid.
I mean, I think a lot of us, when we move out of Christianity especially, it's not often a straightforward jump from, oh, I'm a Christian to I'm an atheist, or I'm agnostic, or whatever. I think there's always that intermediate step for most atheists. I mean, I know there's not for you, Hissy, because you're still pagan. And I'm not saying you're not going to be a pagan, because I don't have any problem with that, to be perfectly honest.
But I think a lot of people do take it as an intermediate step, and that's fine. For me, I've just found the one that suits me.
My concept, my paganism was not going out, not worshipping pagan gods. Mine was more a spiritual step where I went down the road of seeing the universe as its own god. So my spiritual thing was like the universe gave birth to us all. So it even if it's not a thinking entity, it is the creator and it's the god. And then I went all down the whole thing of
I mean, that concept's existed.
It was very similar to the Minbari in Babylon 5.
Wait, actually, no. My immediate thought was the Stoics and the Logos.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah, go on.
Badger baiting is illegal. Yes, it is. I just wanted to check. I just wanted to check the.
Not in Australia, Badger.
I just wanted to check the live chat to make sure Amanda's not here. Good, she's not. Nisa thinks this Disney Star Wars is good, so I can't do it. I've been torturing Badger and Amanda for about a week with my Jar Jar impression.
So
you couldn't even do it because you're laughing so much.
No, and since it is,
Nisa know what you're talking about.
And since Free Comic Book Day would have been this coming Saturday if it weren't for current events. I will mention possibly the greatest, or not the greatest, but certainly the most ambitious attempt at crossover fan fiction ever put to page, the comic series done by Alan Moore, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh,
yes, but that was so ambitious. It just
brilliant comic.
It bit its own tail.
Yeah.
The film was a bastardization of that. It really was.
Oh yeah.
I can see you watch that, you suddenly see why Alan Moore does not want to get involved with films of his own work. He is.
Yeah. Alan Moore has like a really bad, Alan Moore works have a really bad track record of film adaptations.
I think Watchmen was okay. It didn't stray.
Oh, I loved Watchmen.
Ridiculously far. It didn't stray too far from the source material. That was one of the better ones. V for Vendetta it was an okay-ish movie, but it was certainly very, very different to the original graphic.
It was rather convoluted and probably about half an hour longer than it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean it was. Yeah, I think. I mean the graphic novel I think deals with a lot more different themes in a sense, because it is really having that, because it's really looking at these absolute polar ideologies between fascism and anarchism.
The film irritated. I've never read the comics, but the film irritated me because I'm sorry, of all those characters there, the one you decide to idealize and put in the center is the bloke who decided to walk through Africa with a gun. Really?
Actually, if I recall correctly, in the graphic, in the comic series, the one who kind of takes the lead is Mina Harker from Dracula.
Okay, now I'm gonna go read the comic books because that sounds good.
I've actually got all of them.
Cool.
But then here's the thing, because I mean, you talk about again like the whole thing with copywriting. I can't remember. Was that the stuff that Alan Moore wrote for ABC Comics and then DC bought them out? I can't remember if that was the story. But Alan Moore was writing something for ABC Comics.
Are you talking about Miracle Man?
May have been that. But they literally bought out another comic company just so they could get Alan Moore under contract again, because Alan Moore decided he did not want to work for DC and Marvel again.
Yeah.
And he signed on with ABC Comics or something to do like 3 books or something. And after the first one, they bought so literally Alan Moore had to work for, was contractually obliged to work for DC again, much to his
irritation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, he said it was a real fucking Machiavellian move on their part just to get him to work for them again.
And I think it was the Miracle Man.
Yeah.
Is this?
I don't want to turn my channel into a drama thing, but
Yeah.
got the scammer should come on sometimes.
Badger loves you.
Badger, if I do, I promise I will not do any Jar Jar. All right.
Though
He doesn't mind the Jar Jar. Badger should have Amanda on too at the same time.
Out of interest, how many League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are there? Like, volumes.
Jen, I'll just say on that, Jen. There's
quite a few, and I've got pretty much all of them.
Cool. I'll wait until you finally come home then, and you can bring them with you.
Yeah, and the end of the Century trilogy actually kind of deals with Harry Potter. But of course, because Harry Potter isn't in the public domain, it's not explicitly mentioned.
To be honest, the other Harry who's a wizard is way more interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Although, why is there not more of a ship war in that fandom? Why did he have to be straight? He's clearly not straight. He spends at least the first 3 books staring at nothing but his nemesis's eyes. He's obsessed.
Yeah.
He fucking is, isn't he?
Hissy ships Dresden and Marconi.
I love Karen. She's a great character. She's strong, she's independent, she's funny, she can keep Dresden under control. But he's got no respect for her. Because she's a woman. He's a misogynistic pig.
Badger,
Badger,
I'm going to disagree.
He isn't in the TV show.
Sorry, Badger,
he's a wussy little prick in the TV show.
Yeah.
I like the TV show, but the character is so different. It's fucking annoying.
The TV show is not I do not treat the TV show as an adaptation. I treat it as its own thing.
But as its own thing, it's perfectly fine. Yeah. But it's just so different. I do the same thing with The Seeker, which is based on the Wizard's First Rule by Robin Hobb. Is that the right name? I think that's the author.
But anyway, what we're talking about in the comments.
I'm just going to disagree with Badger. I'm sorry. Even Sean Connery could not save League of Extraordinary Gentlemen as a film.
No,
League. And I love Sean Connery as an actor, but even he couldn't save that. It was that bad.
And actually, it's a fact that League destroyed Sean Connery's career.
Unpopular opinion.
Wasn't he offered Morpheus? It was like he was. This is the thing. He turned the Matrix down to do the Avengers because I think he was offered. It was either Morpheus or the Architect. I can't remember which one.
It would have been the Architect.
And he took League of Extraordinary and he turned down Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
Now, so what happened was
Ian McKellen was a brilliant but I think Sean Connery could have made that work.
But
could have been Gandalf.
No, so what happened was he took on League. League completely bombed, and he swore off doing any script that he couldn't understand. So he turned down Gandalf and just kind of retired.
I think he would have pulled Gandalf off. I mean, Ian McKellen was excellent. No doubt about that.
Ian McKellen
could have done it.
The problem is, right, which Harry Potter character do they use in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Because that could make or break the Millennium Edition.
Okay, at the end of the last book of the Millennium Trilogy, which covers or the Century Trilogy, which covers about 100 years. So you've got one that's in 1910, one that's in 1960, and then you've got the modern day one, which kind of deals with Harry Potter slightly. Basically, spoilers for Century. Harry Potter ends up doing a magical school shooting at Hogwarts and turns into the Antichrist.
How has he managed to do a magical school shooting when he's already left school? and he was the jock, and he was the popular boy, and that.
Yeah. Basically, all the fuckery that Dumbledore put him through made him snap, and he did a school shooting at Hogwarts and killed everyone.
What, as an adult?
No, I think it's during, during the books.
I've got to see this. This is just that.
There is no point where that fits with Harry's character.
Yeah.
At all. Losing his marbles and going for Dumbledore, yeah. But
Yeah,
a magical school shooting does not fit Harry's character.
No, he liked the other people too much, and he was rather protective of other people.
Walking into the Slytherin common room and blowing them all away, I can see Harry doing that.
But
especially in the earlier books before he developed a nuanced understanding of the house system.
And like I said, he does go nuts and become the Antichrist and get stopped by Mary Poppins. I'm not lying.
This sounds good. This sounds really good.
This sounds like someone had an acid trip.
Yeah.
This sounds like Alan Moore.
This does sound Alan Moore. This very much sounds Alan Moore.
But in the 1960s one, there's a cameo of Voldemort and the Doctor.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they brag about whose wand is bigger?
No. Tom's at like a Who concert with Mina Harker runs into Voldemort at a it's pre-Dark Lord Voldemort. And you don't know, because it's not a public domain work, Alan Moore can't outright say it, but the character says his name is Thomas, his middle name is a Marvel, and his last name is a Riddle.
Wow, could you be any less obvious? I'm just gonna smack you around the head with a Voldemort-shaped anvil.
Yeah, not without being sued.
Also, how old is this Tom? Because seriously, Tom Riddle was dark from being 14. He murdered his father at 15.
Okay, so it's pre-death Voldemort. I think it's before he got. It's placed before he got rejected for the teaching position at Hogwarts, because he mentions
when he was 17.
Yeah,
no,
he
19.
mentions. Yeah, he mentions going to try for a job at a school up north.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be early 90s.
I've just put something in the
His face is like, this story gets worse by the seconds.
Hissy normally has quite a good poker face, but not for this.
I've just put something in there for a second. Right, okay. You see that the arrow pointing there. This is Greyfriars Kirkyard, the gravestone of one Thomas Riddle, which is where somebody got the name for Voldemort from.
Oh yeah. Oh no, she really admits that all of her ideas are stolen from somewhere else. Although to be fair, walking a graveyard and picking up random names is a perfectly acceptable.
Oh yeah, I mean, but especially when it's a very famous graveyard like Greyfriars is.
My favorite fact about Voldemort is that in the French translations, his middle name is Elvis.
Yeah, that's cool.
No
Thomas
comment.
Elvis Riddle.
That's what they had to do to make the anagram work.
Yeah.
see, this is good. It's like what Hissy and I were talking about earlier today. Jokes that work good in two languages, which the books do quite often.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, the same word in the French translations, the word they use for a wand in the French translations is baguette.
Yeah.
So I've just got this mental image of little wizards running around Hogwarts with like sticks of bread.
So French sticks.
Yeah.
This is what irritates me about them in Doctor Who now. Like using that goddamn screwdriver, looks like they use it like a wand in Harry Potter. It gets very irritating.
Yes. Oh, it's a screwdriver.
There are
not-
way more irritating things about Doctor Who at the moment than
Yeah,
the sonic
that's-
screwdriver.
Also,
Yeah, that's
canonically, Snape is the youngest permanent member of staff. The only other member of staff younger than him is Lockhart, who I think is the year below him, and was what was it they said? A particularly airheaded Hufflepuff. That was how Lockhart was seen at school.
Yeah.
So, Snape is by far the youngest Hogwarts teacher. By about 20 years, I think, seen as the rest of them all taught him. So, yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
And none of them had any teacher training. Yes, but Werewolf McWerewolf's best friend was Dog Black the Black Dog.
Werewolf.
Oh, damn.
Damn it, Momo.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Then you had Dog Black the Black Dog. You had what was it? Minerva, the goddess of war and wisdom, teaching transfiguration.
Yeah.
Crolitic naming conventions in J.K. Rowling. That's the name of an academic article. It's on JSTOR. You have free access at the moment. Go read it. I can't remember who wrote it at this point. Let me open up my Zotero. I'll find out. I quoted it in my dissertation.
And I will say, again, if you do read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it is Alan Moore, so it is definitely a hard R rating.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It is definitely for mature audiences.
But it is
particularly Volume 2, where they do War of the Worlds.
I certainly got a few Alan Moore books down here anyway, so
That's definitely something we have to do on Media Musings.
On Alan Moore alone, yeah.
Alan Moore and War of the Worlds.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, War of the Worlds is already slotted for Halloween.
Oh, that's right. We're going to actually do the musical, though, aren't we?
So you've got.
I have seen the musical live.
You lucky bastard.
Hold
on. Let's see if I can find it here.
So yeah, you've got naming tropes and schemes.
I've got the video of it, but I haven't seen it live on stage.
Still got my T-shirt from it here, Jen. Actually, you probably won't see it too well on here, but
I'm going to make you big.
Yeah.
So you would have seen
lucky
it. You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Back
did
to, Jeff Wayne's War of the World.
Which production did you say?
Nice.
I saw it. It was the last one they did with Justin Hayward still before they switched over to Gary Barlow doing vocals. It was
that was the recent redo of it?
No,
a couple of years ago.
It was when they had I know they had Gary Barlow doing the journalist role, but I saw it just before that when they still had Justin Hayward doing, and the artilleryman when I saw it, because I think in the original
you saw it when Kerry Hope Fletcher was playing the preacher's wife.
Yeah,
think so. There had been some changes in the cast of it. Like, obviously,
it
on the
was
album,
before. But
yeah,
I'm guessing you saw it before they swapped from Richard Burton to Liam Neeson.
Yes.
You lucky bastard.
And but the one that was changed because David Essex did the artilleryman in the musical, but it was God damn it, the Aussie guy Jason Donovan was doing and actually I remember that because I do remember that now because I never thought I'd come away from a show uttering the words bloody hell, Jason Donovan was good.
Do you know what? You've just done?
Yeah,
he's a performer.
Done?
What?
You have actually knocked loose memories of being a teenager and my mother playing on repeat the greatest hits of Jason Donovan, and now I've got too many lonely hearts in my head.
His pop songs. I mean, his pop songs were shite. Let's be honest. But
he can actually sing. He's got some
He
good
can
chops on
sing,
him.
but his music is garbage. Ooh.
Wow, the music he did in the pop era was garbage.
I'll say though, Hissy, you saw him doing Brave New Worlds. He would win you over.
I prefer his rendition
guy.
of Brave New World over the original. Actually,
I presume he was a decent actor in Neighbours because that's where all Aussies start out. Apparently,
not really.
You know, but then is Neighbours like the rite of passage in Aussie for getting famous? Do you have to do that? Is it like you're not allowed to be famous unless you've been on Neighbours?
No.
It feels like it to the rest of the world.
It did seem like we got. It did seem like we got a whole bunch of like Australian pop stars that had somehow started off on Neighbours.
Jason Donovan.
I don't get why you guys love our soapy so much because most of us think they're shit.
We don't like it.
It's aired on a channel at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't love it.
It was a soap opera. It was a soap opera for teenagers, quite frankly. When
you realise
that was the
UK flying Neighbours from Australia was the main reason why Neighbours went for so fucking long.
I can imagine.
I'm sorry. After the third bomb that nearly killed Al, they should have just killed it.
Yeah.
It died once they killed Al off.
I don't actually think they make Neighbours anymore.
I don't think they make it anymore. I think after they killed Al off, they realised they fucked up and stopped it.
Actually, the only one I kind of liked on there was Mark Little because some of his comedy could be quite funny, but he acted on Neighbours for a bit.
This kind of just proves he watched it. I have no idea who any of the characters are on it. I never watched Neighbours, ever.
Mark Little was a stand-up comedian. And he just happened to be acting in it for years. But outside of Neighbours, he was quite funny.
Neighbours, everybody eats the Neighbours with a little bit of garnish. You can find a perfect taste.
Okay,
that's
there we go.
That I would watch that version.
Fan fiction of Neighbours. How about we do like fan fiction of Neighbours, featuring like Jen, Chris, Mero, Notcher, or something.
We could so do. I could do that, and we could do that version of the song for it too.
Yeah,
yeah. It would. Look,
Cannonball Neighbours,
the zombie apocalypse. You.
Yeah, the zombie apocalypse version of Neighbours.
And that doctor is still sleeping around. I don't remember his name, but that doctor is still sleeping around.
The problem is we'd have to find a British person to write it for us because none of us have ever watched Neighbours.
Neighbours, it's the Fosters of soap operas. It came from Australia, but none of them want it.
Home and Away had more of a following than Neighbours, but I mean, I did watch Home and Away for a little bit when I was in high school because
my mum watched
Australian
soap opera.
I watched EastEnders, which is your payback to us.
Yeah,
it was. It legitimately was your payback to us, wasn't it? EastEnders.
Yeah.
Jen, no matter what the fuck England has done to Australia over the years, or it's sending criminals there, or whatever. There's no way on earth you can quantify the fact that you sent Rolf Harris our way, okay?
You sent a dude with a tray to sing to us.
All right. I admit, we have sent a lot of Australian personalities overseas because we didn't want them. Sending you guys Rolf Harris was probably the meanest thing we ever did. But to be fair, we didn't fucking want him.
You sent us Ken Ham.
Yeah, wow. It fits in over there.
Actually, I will say Rolf Harris is worse than Ken Ham on a certain lot of levels. So,
but anyways, Neighbours, Australian for soapies.
The only decent Australian soap opera I ever saw was Flying Doctors. That wasn't bad. I mean, it still wasn't particularly realistic, but at least it was fun.
That was over here, but it wasn't. I think it was shown like a weird hour a day or something.
And well after it was actually televised here, you guys got it so late. Oh, and there was a show made here called GP that was actually really good, but I'm reluctant to call it a soap opera because it wasn't an ongoing, continuing story. It was a weekly story, but we also got to know the characters' lives and stuff like that. So it was more like House.
And the thing is, I know there's some good, Aussie TV series that had never been shown. I mean, like, I only found this because I found it online, but the mini series Bikey Wars I thought was really good, and I know the true story behind that as well. So,
never seen it, never even heard of it.
It's basically it's kind of a true story. It led to a quite infamous gangland shooting in Australia between two biker clubs.
Oof.
Yeah.
So Bad Tempered Badger said,
I know some fan fiction authors who are just starting out. We'll get them working on this version of Neighbours.
Yeah.
And
you
then,
know the problem with the Neighbours TV series is none of them swear enough.
And then
this will be like an
R. Says, do you think we could write that badly?
R-rated. They should have said "fuck" a lot more than was said.
And Badger says, "I can write badly."
Is that challenge accepted, Badger?
Challenge accepted.
So we got to have a fan fiction Neighbours, but starring Jen, I think Chris, Mero. Sam. Who else we're missing? I'm sure there's others.
Mr. Bear.
Mr. Bear, yeah.
There's a few others.
Of course, if you're gonna have Notja in there, you got to make jokes about him being two-dimensional.
Two-dimensional, yeah. And we'd have to have a cheesecake somewhere.
An episode of Neighbours about the cheesecake incident.
Mero.
And Mero Snake could be the equivalent of Bouncer.
Mm-hmm.
You got the joke there, Jen, so don't tell me you didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it. No, I've never knowingly watched it. It may have been on in the house and somebody else watching it, but I never knowingly went and sat and watched the show. It wasn't my thing. I did do it for a little while with Home and Away, but only because I particularly liked one of the actors who was in the show at the time, and I was a teenager. And when they killed him off, I stopped watching.
Well, we've all got one show like that.
I think we've evolved enough. Maybe we should start wrapping up.
We were talking like classical history and like canon here.
Yeah, how did we go from classical history to Home and Away?
So bad Australian
especially as we've made so many better shows than those.
So, anyways, let's start with the shilling. Hissy.
I'm Hissy. Hissy's Hideaway. I've managed to somehow fall into doing a weekly stream with Jeff on Asterisk, although it may be less than weekly as we proceed. I'm a classicist, historian, looking at different things. Officially part of the club because Ring and I had a YouTube stream cut off yesterday. So I officially calling us part of the club now. So there will be something on that coming up on my channel over the next few days, as long as I can get it edited. And yeah, so I'm going to be doing a lot of historical debunking. I've got a list of like media, TV shows, historical dramas I want to have a look at. Historical dramas are kind of my guilty pleasure. Like I can get over the fact that the Victorians had zips in their clothes. If you know the relationships are hot enough. Fanfiction writer, crocheter, all my social medias on my YouTube. It's also on my Twitter at Danger Hissy. You can find it all there. If you find my fanfiction, Dead Dove Do Not Eat, I'm even more explicit there than I am here. I put Jen to shame. I can make Jen blush, I guarantee it.
Oh yeah, you can.
So yeah.
Okay, and Jeff?
Got Jeff, aka Godless Scammer, got a small channel where I just bullshit my way through videos and make it sound like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, which I don't. As Hizzy mentioned, we are kind of doing like a little weekly collaboration. We're kind of taking it in turns to go on each other's channels and go through Asterix books. And I believe it's my turn to host the next one next week, which I think will be Asterix and the Goths.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I've really got in the pipeline coming up, although there's one or two other videos that I may have coming, but I haven't got anything confirmed yet. So yeah, give my channel a little love. I want to get over 250 subs at some point. Been trying for months.
Yeah,
We'll get you there.
And Jen?
Yep, I'm Jen from Jen's Little Corner. I do debunking of woo, LGBTQ stuff. I do a lot of science content, and I generally swear a lot. But I've been actually pretty mild tonight.
Yeah, you've actually managed to behave yourself for once.
Well,
This is the most restrained Jen I've ever seen.
She's sober.
Actually, all night I've been very restrained, even on
critical questions.
Critical questions. I think I must have run out of insults after doing my video with on spirit science. Even then, I was actually pretty restrained.
No, we can't
it's
have
lack
this.
of sleep, I think.
We can't have this.
So I did a video that I released tonight about a complete and absolute cockwomble called Jordan, who does the channel Spirit Science, and he's a fuckwit, so go and watch that. Does that help?
Is he the vegan dude?
That's our Jen.
No,
He was the one who did the Interstellar video.
Yeah,
you're thinking
he's the one who believes in space Jews.
Yeah. See, I think you're the one.
Space Jews. No, you really have
we're
to see
Jews
some of
in
this.
space.
I think
the thing this guy believes is just it's so out there.
Have you been watching too much Ancient Aliens? I know that's on Netflix now. Don't watch it. Don't give it the views. It's not worth it.
Shit.
No, the guys are complete nut job. I have a stream probably coming
up
up this
series
week
on Ancient Aliens.
Which reminds me, I was possibly going to ask you to see if you wanted to be part of it. I'm looking to put together a stream, and I've already got a couple of guests lined up where we're going to be talking about some of the history of feminism and how some of modern feminism is completely fucked up, and how a lot of us feel that it's a little bit imbalanced as to how the public perception of feminism is.
So who wants to talk? Who wants to talk about Mary?
Sign you up. I figured you'd want to be signed up to that one. The other guests on that are Julie from Junk Shops. Other half, yep. And Bionic Dance Kate.
That's interesting channel.
Hey,
interesting
did you
stream,
have Moon in the chat earlier? She's fun for
we did.
It is.
Yeah, she's a feminist too. I was thinking of asking Elia as well. Having a nice little group who could discuss this actually be very interesting.
Yes.
So
cool.
So I'm hoping to put that together and have that as a stream at some point during this week. It may not actually be till next weekend because it depends on the time for everybody. Because between Australia, the UK, and the US, it's going to be thing. I mean, most of the guests will be US, and of course, it'll be me from Australia. Mero may be part of it as well, so she actually may fill in the extra spot. I don't know, but I wanted the UK perspective because the UK perspective is very central to a lot of it, and it's.
Well, I'm a night owl, so I can do pretty much any time as long as I'm not working.
Yeah. Well, I'll have a talk with you later, and we will figure that out because I think this will be very interesting.
I think it's being a historical expert. You could probably tell him who like Mary Wollstonecraft was and stuff. So,
if I can get through it without choking.
Yeah.
To be fair,
it'll be a very interesting discussion.
I can only describe Mary Wollstonecraft as the Daily Mail personified.
Oh my god, that is dreadful.
But at the time, she's regarded as an early feminist. Weird.
No, she wasn't.
I mean, as an Australian, I have to take responsibility for another one of our fucked up exports, Jermaine Greer.
Oh, You can have her back.
Yeah, you can have
I
her
don't
back.
want it. She was an iconicized feminist of her time, but she is a downright bigot, and she's a self obsessed hack. Really,
Yes.
I think that's the best way to
Really
describe her, isn't it, Dizzy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Self-obsessed.
that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, I was being nice.
One thing I'll say about Mary Wollstonecraft. Then, well, if you didn't like her, Hissy, do you know where her daughter and her husband's like kind of consummated their relationship? It was on Mary's grave.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Well, that's one way of having your mother. If your mother's against your relationship, doing it over her dead body.
You know who her daughter was, though, don't you?
Go on.
Mary Shelley.
Oh, cool. I totally get that now.
Now you understand it, don't you?
Now I get it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, who was that other one in like the 50s who wanted to go back to... She was one of these traditional gender role people.
Oh.
Mary something. Was it Mary Whitehouse?
Mary Whitehouse?
She was the one who was censoring.
No, she was later. She was more 70s, wasn't she?
She was more one about trying to like censor TV a bit, you know.
Yeah, she's the one who's the Daily Mail personified.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah,
We're
Mary,
meant to be
Mary
helpmeets
Wollstonecraft
in the
is what
home.
you'd like. Yeah, Mary. That's what I was a bit surprised to see. I was going to say, I think Mary Wollstonecraft you probably quite like.
Yeah, no, it's me mixing up names. My apologies. Yeah, Mary Whitehouse, man, don't get me started.
I think the goodies absolutely did a brilliant job of taking the piss out of her back in the day.
And still, some of it wasn't as funny as what she actually said.
And Mary Whitehouse, you can't do that. Stop that. Stop that. That's brilliant.
There was an entire UK sketch show called the Mary Whitehouse Experience, which was a real
my god
dig at her. It was It was Steve Punt, Hugh Dennis, David Baddiel, and Rob Newman. And it was really good.
You know what?
Hugh Dennis is amazing. I love him.
I'm going to do Mary Whitehouse and we'll go, oh dear, you can't do that.
Rob Newman was the best of them, without a doubt. But...
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised at that because he's quite amazing when he does his stuff. I mean, Mary Whitehouse was so pissed off with so many things. I mean,
we got off on so many.
You think of the 80s comedies that were coming out and the late 70s stuff when you had the likes of Python and the goodies coming out and that, but then you go into the 80s and you get the young ones and you get Kenny Everett and things like that. And she was fucked over.
2 words. Spitting
My finger is on the mute button, Jen.
Oh, spitting image, yes.
But spitting image is fun.
Okay. So, and finally me, not sure if I'll have an edited video out this week. I might edit down the stream that has been blocked and release our bit covering the intro. Because
you're gonna do that, let me know, and then I can make my video.
Also, if you're gonna do that, I'd upload it hidden for a while and just see how YouTube reacts to make sure you've got enough head cut out.
If you edit down all the parts of this stream that are relevant to the actual conversation, you'll have like a 15-minute video.
But I did take a look at it in studio, and what seemed to have gotten us dinged was a bit where we were just kind of letting it play because we didn't really have anything to say about it.
Yeah, so we can cut that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
I think your solution is if you wanted to do any more of them, you might have to watch through beforehand and take cuttings out of it and then talk about the sections you want to talk about rather than actually watch it all the way through.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how how many I do have ideas for edited videos to come up. but I'm not sure how many I'll be able to get out because because I'm an essential worker and work has been slammed.
Mm-hmm.
I've been basically getting off work and going immediately to sleep.
Can you see that, or is there too much glare?
It's a bit too much glare.
Yeah, hold on. This is do you remember I was talking about the shot in that program that we were reviewing that was just completely stupidness?
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's supposed to be an image from the Colosseum. Look through the window.
Yeah.
But anyways, next week on next month on Media Musings is all Star Wars month. Next week we are starting with the original trilogy, followed by the prequels, which will hopefully feature Apologia if Jen is doing her job.
Yeah, I'm chasing him through Shannon, so hopefully we have him. So.
Okay, and then followed by the Disney movies, and
which will probably feature Badger because he won't want to shut up about it.
And then, what will probably feature Badger is the following week, which will be the expanded universe, and then we'll finish out the month on the 31st with the D&D game.
Yeah.
And, of course, every Saturday on the Daily Atheist channel, I do the Dungeons and Dragons game. And that's been fun.
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus.
Jesus.
No, Jesus is a snake.
Jesus is a snaky boy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Jesus is a snake.
Oh, yeah, because...
I think we now know what Miro should name her snake.
Yeah. In,
Jesus.
Yeah. No, I am definitely Team Thylacine.
Man, Team Tiger.
I'm only Team Tiger just to wind her up, but...
I think Team Thylacine. I like Thylacine.
Now, if
she will discover that it's... Well, it doesn't matter with those names if she discovers that it's a boy instead of a girl, does it?
Yeah. Now, if it were a dog, I would be Team Tiger.
But only if it was Spotty.
But the thing is, when you have a dog, you've got to have a name that you can call out, and it's easier to call out Tiger than Thylacine.
Imagine trying to call your dog drunk if it was called Thylacine.
Yeah.
Thylacine.
But anyways, Scummer, do you have a tagline?
Not really. Just see you all later. Stay safe, everyone, and see ya. Bye.
Yeah. Hissy?
There hasn't been nearly enough swearing on this channel, so take care, be good, and for fuck's sake, if you can, please be careful.
And before I close out with the special hybrid tagline, I will say that hopefully in June, I don't know, this is just an idea I've had. Like, maybe we could do a Media Musings comparing the series that we were tearing apart with Asterix.
No, that would be an insult.
Baby, one hell of a win.
No, like saying how this is how you do historical fiction for kids right with Asterix, and this is how you do shitty propaganda for kids.
The problem is I have at least an hour that I have to produce on my ranting and raving about that Troy movie with Brad Pitt. Because I watched that last night. Because I saw the word Troy and thought, ooh, interesting, on Netflix. And then I watched it.
Oh, is that the one where they do the arrows? You see, they did the whole arrow shooting thing on top of things, which was never a fucking thing because fire arrows shot on top of thatched roofs do not normally catch them alight because normally the arrows go out before they get there.
No, this was the one where Achilles didn't actually like war, and Patroclus was his cousin, but they were still homoerotic as all hell.
It's like that's what I got. It was like Achilles is like all Achilles ever fought for was his own fucking vanity and glory, you know.
And then Patroclus comes along, gets himself killed, and Achilles loses his shit.
The only character I didn't mind too much in that was Hector. That was about the only one I didn't mind.
Anyways,
like
that's very
like
much its
anyway,
own.
we're going off on a
That's
tangent.
very much going. That could very much be its own episode.
Yes.
So remember, indoctrination is a hell of a selfie stick.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.